Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I have a brand new video for you today, which I'm so excited to finally be doing. It's my career Q&A. I introduced a careers section to my website last year, and I'm so happy to be continuing this onto YouTube as well. I often get questions about my job, both of my jobs, and I wanted to take some time to see if I could answer some of them directly so that everyone could have them all in one place and I could have some time to think about my answers. So what I've been doing is, if you follow me on Instagram or Twitter, I've been asking you guys to send me any questions you have that are career related, whether it's about magazines or blogging or internships or fashion, anything like in that general umbrella, publishing and media, to see if I could answer them for you. And so I hope you guys find this video super helpful, and I hope that I can provide some insight into the industries or industry that you are either working in or would like to be working in. So yeah, let's jump right into it. I'm ready now. The first question is actually pretty broad, so I'm glad to be starting with it. Do you have any tips on how to start a blog? Sure, okay. So, the Keep Calm and Chiffon that you know now is not the Keep Calm and Chiffon that it was 3 years ago, or even just 1 year ago, or a long time ago when I first started. The first blog I ever had was actually a Tumblr page, and I would be reblogging images mostly of outfits or of travel, like of destinations I wanted to visit, and to have it all in one place. And it was called Urban Sunshine and BlairWaldorf.tumblr.com. And while it was really fun to reblog images, I kind of started to wish that like I was the one creating those images. So I started uploading some of my photos to Tumblr too that would occasionally get like blogged or that other people would see, and I sort of became more interested in doing that than kind of repeating what other people had already done. So I had a digital camera at the time, and I would set it up, like lean it against my windowsill and have the automatic timer and take outfit photos in my room. If I can find one, I'll insert a photo here so you can see. It's pretty different than what I do now. So then I moved to Blogger in 2012 and started producing all my own original content on there. And then in 2014, I believe, I moved it over to Squarespace, where it lives now. And now, more than just sharing outfit photos and maybe a small anecdote from the day, I really try to make it a destination for people to learn my perspective on fashion, beauty, lifestyle, travel, career, all of that good stuff. So I guess to answer the question, my advice for how to start a blog is to just start, because you can always change and improve it as time goes on. I was nervous about the name for a while and was worried I might have to like change the name if I didn't like it. Thank goodness I still like it all this time later. But even if you do have to change your name, that's okay. Like, ask your audience what they want to see, if they have any ideas. You never know what someone might say that could inspire you. So honestly, if you have any kind of idea, just start, and as you do it, you'll learn from there. The next question is kind of the next step of that. So now that you have the blog, what do you do if you want to blog or do YouTube full time? So I don't know if I can fully answer this, since I don't actually do blogging and YouTube full time. We'll get into that in a bit. But I think one of the things that you can do, at least in the beginning, is kind of figure out your brand and figure out who you are, and if you'd like to start to monetize the content that you create, how you can explain that to potential partners or potential brands that you'd like to work with. So one thing that I did was to create a media kit for myself, and it lists all of my social media stats, it lists the brands that I've worked with, it lists my audience, like who reads my blog, who follows me on Instagram, that kind of thing. So as I'm sure you can guess, my demographic is women, usually like 18 to 25, typically based in New York, typically interested in fashion, beauty, etc. This is also super helpful for you as a content creator, because you know who your audience is and you can actually figure out how to best make things that they'll really want to read and that they'll respond to. I think something that you should definitely do if you'd like to consider blogging and doing YouTube full-time is just make sure that you have some kind of security, like financial security. You gotta figure out like healthcare, taxes. There's kind of a lot to think about. So I think anyone can make the leap to full-time, but you really just want to be thinking ahead and make sure that you're ready for it and that you're in a good position to be doing what you love. I kind of smushed these next questions together because they are related. Where do you begin to get a job at a magazine company, or how do you get your foot in the door? So the best possible way that you could be doing this is by interning for a company. If you're in college, then fantastic. I would apply to as many internships as you could for as many magazines as you are interested in. The more that you can apply to, the higher your chances are of getting a job at one of those. And the connections that you make there will become so important later on when they go to recommend you for the next internship, or if a job opens up or anything like that. When I have an intern who I work with 2 or 3 days a week and they're working super closely with me, and I can start to see their strengths and what they're good at, and if they're asking the right kinds of questions, or if they actually solve things before I even have to tell them what I want them to do. It's people like that and things like that that employers will notice that will help you stand out if you're applying for a different internship or a different job. So I think that internships would be the best possible way. If you are not in college and can't get an internship, definitely try reaching out to editors or writers who you admire and just ask for 15 minutes of their time. Ask if you can take them to coffee, or ask if you can hop on the phone. You'd be surprised how many people in this industry are really willing to talk to you. I think that if you're young and enthusiastic and you really just want to get some insight from someone who's kind of been where you'd like to be, so many people, more than you'd imagine, are willing to take the time to talk to you. So definitely try to reach out to them. Have you ever taken unpaid internships, and how did you make that work financially? So I had 6 internships in college and 5 of them were unpaid. I do think that all interns should be paid, but there are so many unpaid internships out there that are worth the time to make the connections. So if you're able to take on an unpaid internship, then that's great. One thing that I did in college was I always had a job in retail, so I was working at Free People a few days a week when I was in school. To clarify, I had some help from my parents through college as well, but just in terms of my own, like, wanting to make my own money, getting the job at Free People was great. And then when I did finally get my first paid internship, which was my second semester senior year, I actually ended up leaving Free People. I just realized it was time. It had been like 2.5 years, and since my internship and the job essentially paid the same thing, I could afford to quit. So that's something to consider too. Next up, okay, beyond Ed 2010 and Intern Queen, what is the best way to find New York City based jobs in specifically editorial and social media? So those, first of all, are both excellent resources to be looking for jobs and internships. If you're interested in fashion too, I would recommend freefashioninternships.com. I'll link it down below. I think that's what it's called. Also, Indeed, you never know what might pop up on there. But another trick that I think is really helpful is to follow companies on LinkedIn and to follow specific people in the industry you're interested in on like Twitter or Instagram, because I often tweet out or post out, like, if we're looking for interns at interview, I'll say like, hey, shoot an email to this address, or if you know anyone, share it or pass it along. And the more people like that you can already be following, the better. I follow lots of writers and editors who will also constantly tweet out, hey, I'm looking for a freelancer, or hey, I'm currently accepting pitches for this. So always be on the lookout for stuff like that, because I think that that's one of the best ways now, like social media as well. Just go directly to the source, like follow the people who are going to be hiring you, because they'll probably be mentioning that information at some point. How did your art history background translate to you working in writing and publishing? I love this question because I love talking about art history. If you don't know, I was an art history major in college, and I think the great thing about art history is it really just teaches you how to write about something very specific. What's great about art history is being able to look at an image and then kind of draw conclusions based on what you see and then explain it to someone else. So that's why there are certain art history textbooks that I like more than others, because they're better storytellers and they're better at communicating the idea behind a painting or a sculpture or anything like that. So first of all, it directly relates to what I do now, because I do often write about art, which is great. And for anything else like fashion or music, it's kind of the same formula. So if I'm doing a music profile, I have to listen to the songs and really extract, like, okay, like, what does the melody sound like? What are the bass notes saying? All of that. And then how can I communicate it to someone who's reading it, who may not, if it's in print, I can't give you a link to the YouTube video. So I want to make sure that I'm really able to communicate that. And I think that art history was hugely helpful in that way. How do you balance your magazine career and your blogging career? This is like the question. Like, How? Honestly, a lot of time management is required. I've been blogging for 5 years now, so I did blog all throughout college and while I was at Nylon and now while I'm at Interview. So if you don't know, currently I'm an editor at Interview magazine. That is my full-time job. I am there Monday to Friday from 10 to 6, and that is what I spend most of my week doing. So anytime that you see a YouTube video or a blog post, that's something that I have to create outside of that time frame. So I guess, like, how do I make the time to do that? Well, for example, this video, it is 9 a.m. on a Saturday. I did not go out last night. I got a good night's sleep. I went to bed early because I really knew I wanted to film today and make sure I got these videos up. What I've also been doing lately is waking up earlier and spending about 45 minutes to an hour in the morning either writing blog posts or answering emails or answering comments on blogs or checking out other people's blogs and leaving comments on those. That's kind of a specific amount of time that I can now set aside to make sure I'm getting my work done. So usually what'll happen is if I write a blog post, I'll have it go up first thing in the morning, and then I'll start to social it later in the evening when I get home from work. So usually around like 7 or 8, because that's when people are getting home, eating dinner, and I know they're gonna be on their phones. So as I mentioned, this does require a lot of time management, and that's one of the reasons why I don't have specific posting schedules, as I'm sure you know. On YouTube, I usually try to do 1 to 2 videos a week, but depending on if we're closing an issue at the magazine or depending on if I have more or less time, that's kind of why I can't fully commit to a specific day or time. Or if I want to do blog posts, I always give myself the goal of 8 blog posts throughout the month, and I don't always specify like this is going up on Monday, this is going up on this day. It really depends on how much time I have and which days end up being busier than others. So everyone seems to be cool with that for now. I hope they are, because you can still always expect usually the same amount of content, but it just doesn't always land on particular days. So while it is definitely tricky to balance at times, I love both still. I realized I wanted to be a magazine editor a long time ago, and I kind of just started blogging like, I guess by accident almost, just from Tumblr. I really do love both of my jobs, and as long as I love both, I'll continue to do both. Cool, so the use of LinkedIn is vital to establishing connections outside of the confines of one's general field of work. How early would I encourage people to establish those connections? This is a great question because LinkedIn is such an amazing tool for reaching out to people. I think that doing it on the earlier side is great, even if it's just to reach out and say, hey, I'm a big fan of your work, like I'm happy to be connected, and I just am looking forward to maintaining a professional relationship and following your career and what you get up to. Something as simple as that, first of all, it's flattering, so who doesn't want to hear that? And the second part of that is also that one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was from my dad. You don't want to be asking someone for a favor without kind of having a connection with them. So if you already have a connection with someone and you've built up a professional relationship with them, and then 6 months later you find out that they're hiring for an internship or a job, you've already established a connection with them. You're not just kind of randomly hopping in and saying, hey, I want to connect with you also about this job and this and that, because that's what everyone's going to be doing. I personally would be more likely to respond to someone who did something like that rather than kind of just jumped in at the same time as everybody else. Because also you have an advantage by talking to that person, probably about what they're looking for or what their company does or anything along those lines. So definitely use LinkedIn, but use it strategically. Make sure that you're reaching out to people who work in at least an industry you want to work in, or your industry too, and see what they have to say about their jobs. Is persistence the answer to making a connection with someone at your dream company? There must be another way. Yeah, being persistent, I think, is kind of the overarching most important part of that, because there are people who will reach out to me and, you know, my inbox gets very cluttered very quickly. Sometimes I'll need people to follow up with me and remind me and say, hey, like, I just wanted to bring this to the top of your inbox. Like, I emailed you about a week ago. Could we make time to talk this week? Like, grab a cup of coffee or whatever it is. So in that sense, persistence, yes, is very important, but I think that there are other strategies too. I think that social media is a good way to do this, and I'll give you an example. If there's a writer or editor whose work I really like, I'll tweet out the article and tag them and say, this person wrote this awesome thing, like everyone else should hear about it, because then they'll notice you, and they'll also notice you as someone who works in their industry or is interested in the work that they're doing. So if you kind of become a constant presence like that, who's just supportive and like kind of sharing what they're doing and championing what their work is and what they're doing, that's a great way to then later on go in and say, hey, like, I know we've been following each other on Twitter for a little while. Would you like to get a cup of coffee? Also, so many companies do informational interviews, so definitely look into the ones that you're interested in and see if that's something that they offer. What is the most important thing to have on your resume or cover letter when applying to a high-profile internship? Fantastic question. I honestly believe that the most important thing that you can have on your resume when applying to an internship is relevant experience. And I guess here's what I mean by that. Pretty much every internship that I was applying to when I had no internship experience wanted like 2 to 3 years of experience interning at a fashion magazine. And all I was thinking was, how the heck am I supposed to get experience if I don't have experience? So during my sophomore spring at Barnard, I really wanted to apply for a summer internship at a fashion magazine. I didn't have any magazine experience, and I was trying to think like what I could say on my resume or cover letter to kind of make any experience that I had relatable to what would be happening in the fashion closet at a fashion magazine. So there were two reasons I'm pretty sure I got that internship at Marie Claire. The first one was that I had interned the previous summer with a fashion designer in the garment district because I think I originally thought that design was more what I wanted to do. And after spending a summer doing that, I could safely say I was not going to be a designer. But I did have experience in the garment district, kind of looking after samples and helping put a collection together. And my friend who I actually went to high school with, who also went to Barnard with me, invited me to direct a scene of a fashion show at Columbia. When doing the Lunar Gala fashion show, we needed to collect clothing for our models. So what we would do is reach out to small New York City based designers and say, hey, we're doing this fashion show fundraiser at Columbia, like, would you be willing to lend clothing to it? And actually the first designer who I got to lend us clothing was a connection that I had made while I was an intern for a different designer. So that was a huge get to say like, hey, this other designer is participating, would you be willing to also? So we ended up getting some really cool designers, and again, that required a lot of like making sure the samples got back okay, making sure they weren't stained. So does any of this sound familiar to you? It should, because this is exactly pretty much what they do in a fashion closet. And by the way, I had no contacts at Hearst, which was where I was applying to most internships. I literally sent an email to HR and I wasn't even sure if they got it or not. And then I heard back from Marie Claire. I heard they were interested in speaking to me for an internship. And when I hopped on the phone, I just played up all of the experience with the fashion show and with the designer that I thought would be most relevant to Marie Claire. I got 3 questions that were also kind of smushed together, so I thought I'd finish this off with a little like rapid fire. Favorite job I've ever had. They're all so great for so many different reasons. I guess I would say being assistant editor at Nylon was probably my favorite job that I ever had. I'd been reading Nylon since I was literally in middle school, like the least possible cool, reading the coolest thing known to man. So to actually end up getting a job there at a magazine I had worshipped for like years and years was definitely awesome. So I think I have to say that. My biggest accomplishment in the fashion industry. Well, I kind of have 2. Is that cheating? The first was when I went to Teen Vogue's Fashion University when I was in college. The Cut took a photo of me and named me a future star of fashion. No joke, link it below so you can check that out. And then I think the second thing would be, actually it just happened a few weeks ago. I got to produce my own fashion story for Interview's website. I'll also leave a link to that down below, with this awesome emerging designer. His name is Han Wen. And just to like kind of be in charge of all elements of that coming together, it was so cool. And to say like I made this happen, like looking at an image and be like, this happened because I talked to this person and got them all in a room and they took photos, that was pretty cool. So I think that's probably one of my favorite things that I've done so far. And coolest fashion event I've ever been to, I think I would have to say like the first Fashion Week show I ever went to, which was a few years ago now. It was a Rebecca Minkoff show, and I actually got to go because I was talking to my former boss from Cosmo.com, and she was like, oh, they want us to send a former intern to Rebecca Minkoff. Would you be interested in going? And I was like, what? Okay. They were like, do you want to bring a friend? I was like, Ellie! So I called my friend Ellie and we went, and also Zella Day performed, and I love her. So I didn't know where to look between like the fashion show that was happening and like Zella Day performing. It was so overwhelming. So I think that was definitely my favorite fashion event. Thank you all so much for sending questions in. I was honestly convinced I was gonna have to make some up myself because I didn't think I would hear from that many people, but you guys asked really amazing questions and I hope I gave you some helpful answers. If you have any more questions that didn't come up in this video, feel free to leave me a note in the comments and I will try to get to them for you. Be sure to subscribe to my channel so that you never miss a video. I'm definitely hoping to do more career-related posts, so if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up down below so I know to do more videos like this. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have the best day, and I will see you soon. Bye.